Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Iyun Talina, and today's Siman in Shulchan Aruch Yomi is Siman Kuf Sadi Vav 196. Talking about eating today, making brachas and being part of a zimun on machalim masurim, things that are forbidden to eat, whether it's d'oraisa or d'rabbanan. Now, Halacha Gimel deals with something which is a little bit of a head scratcher. In order to be part of a zimun together, it's not just if two of the people ate kosher food, one person ate non-kosher food, or non-kosher midrabanan, right? Or even the Rabbanut said it was kosher. Because if the Rabbanut says it's kosher, I don't think it's called not kosher. Technically, even though people will say they'll never eat the Rabbanut, they'll swear, Yarig Val Yavar, they won't eat the Rabbanut here in Israel, or they won't eat Triangle K in America. I don't think you have to be Yarig Val Yavar for eating Triangle K, even though a lot of people would be. A lot of people would give their lives rather than eat Triangle K or eat Rabbanut here in Israel, or even eat Rabbanut Mahadran. Unfortunately, the truth is that according to a lot of shitas, and it's probably okay to eat Rabbanut. Fortunately, everyone when they started giving hechsherim, people were very excited. You didn't have to check the ingredients anymore. It used to be you have to go to Heinz ketchup, check is there any glycerin in there, any animal fats, and then you could eat it. So the Hashgachas did a kindness to all of Klal Yisrael. You can know exactly which food you eat, and you go to any supermarket, a good portion of the products will have OU on them because it's beneficial for the company that a lot of Jews know they could eat it. Now, what started off as a nice idea has grown to be a monstrosity and really not just confuse people, because there's a lot of confusion, especially if you go out of the tri-state area. You go to different communities. Let's say you go to California, you go to Texas, you go to Florida, you go Detroit, Cleveland. They have hashkachas that you didn't hear about. Even Lakewood, I haven't heard of the hashkachas. I don't know what the hashkachas they have there. But you go to these places and they have their own hachsherim over there, and you're clueless. You go on the internet. You try what's approved by the Star K. The Star K approves this hechsher. It's become a headache, right? If you're someone who's makbid on these hechsherim, it's a headache. You have to figure out which hechsher is kosher and which hechsher is not kosher, right? No, they're all kosher. They're all kosher. Even the Triangle K relies on certain kulas. It's not a reform hashkafa. But the problem is that not only has it become a headache for people who are makbid on certain hechsherim, but also it's become a little bit of it divides Klal Yisrael. Divide people who you're one of the people who eat these hechsherim. You can't be part of us. You can't marry into our family. And this is the truth. It's a sad occurrence that what started off, as an innocuous thing, the OU giving a hechsher, maybe it was the first hechsher OU, an innocuous thing. This is a great thing. We know things are kosher. Has really divided Klal Yisrael, and not even talk about the hechsherim themselves, the companies themselves that give the hechsherim, that are have political concerns and they have financial benefits that they're doing. I've heard here, the good hechsherim here in Israel, how they could be paid off. They violate the policies of the hechsher, and the hechsher says we're terminating your hechsher. They say okay, has $10,000 down, or has even $1,000 down. Oh, no problem. Don't do it again. This is a sad reality. I talked to a store owner. He personally had never had this problem, at least according to his own account. But he knows many store owners had a different hechsher this happened to, and it's very sad. So that means, even at the top, one of the top hechsherim you told me here in Israel, this is true about. If that can't be trusted, then how can you trust any hechsherim? So this whole concept of hechsherim has completely divided Klal Yisrael. It's created these behemoths of political and financial turmoil, and it's created a headache for the Jewish consumer. I say get rid of hechsherim completely. We don't go and no hechsherim. Get rid of hechsherim. And really, a food is becheskas heter until you tell me it's treif. Until you can prove that it's food treif, right? The Gemara says an animal once it's shechted, once it's killed, becheskas heter, right? Once the food is made, becheskas heter. Until you prove to me that it's treif. So the burden of proof is on the treif. If you don't know, right, it's not a subject d'oraisa usually. A subject d'rabbanan usually, whether there's process, because usually it's batal barov. Batal barov, maybe we're machmer, chayshin lemiyuta midrabanan, but it's really only the rabbanon. It's something the rabbanon cool. If you don't know, you don't even have to ask a rabbi. You can just be makel and eat the product. So what someone had a good intention, I believe the people who came out of Aksher, the OU, I guess was the first one who came out of Aksher, had good intentions, but it's really been a really destructive factor in Klal Yisrael. Um, but if we didn't have Aksher, we wouldn't have Mishpacha magazine to talk about. Every third week they give an article about different Aksher and the kashrus process. So anyway, side point. So Halacha Gimel over here, we're talking about someone who's makbid on pasakum. Just say I haven't heard about it. Some people are, some people are not. Here in Eretz Israel, most of the pasta is made by Jews, but in America, you go to a shop, right? You go on A&P, so you can buy Arnold's bread, different brands of bread that are non-Jewish companies, but they have an OU, and then they're pasakum. Most people don't care about pasakum. I seriously made sure some people are makbid, but generally most people are not makbid on pasakum. But there are people that are makbid on pasakum. So this halacha talks about that. Someone, if three people are eating together, let's say two of them are kohanim, and they're eating challah. Now, secondly, kohanim are eating challah nowadays. We're not talking about challah and Shabbat. We're talking about challah that you're mafresh, right? Women are mafresh when they make a certain amount of flour and water, a certain amount of dough. You usually burn it because kohanim are tmeim mace. They can't get rid of the tumah, but technically in a time where they were Torah, they're eating challah or truma. And they're eating like Yisrael, who's a third person. So they could be mazamin together, even though the Yisrael can't eat with the Kohanim. He can't eat their challah, but the Kohanim could eat what the Yisrael's eating. He's eating regular bread. But what if the Yisrael's eating pasakum? And the Yisrael's not making a pasak, but the Kohanim, because they're Kohanim. So they're eating challah, but they're making a pasakum. So they can't join together for mazimut because they each can't eat what the other person is eating. If you can't eat what the other person is eating, you can't join together. Now, it makes sense to me if, right, the Yisrael was eating asr midrabanan, or right, someone's eating something which is asr midrabanan or asr midaraisa. Like the first halacha we had today, that if you can't be mazamin if someone's eating, one of the three people is eating something which is asr, you can't be mazamin on that. You can't make a bracha before or after because you're not allowed to do it. Baruch b'yadni Hashem. Someone who makes a bracha to Hashem, you're blessing Hashem for something that He forbids you. It's sort of like, it's like the worst type of rebellion against Hashem. It's like kicking Hashem in the face, So you can't do that. So, but here there's no problem. Pasakum is a chumrah, right? It's a chumrah. Even the person who takes it as a chumrah probably says bli neder, right? If you don't see bli neder, maybe it's a neder, and maybe then it's an isser. But a lot of times people say bli neder, they take these things on themselves, so it's not really usser, and it probably includes that also the halacha when he says bli neder. So he says bli neder, he's not really usser. So how come they're not mitzdarif? I can understand the svara, the logic. If one person is eating something which is forbidden, you can't join together. But the Kohanim could just change their bli neder and say, okay, now we'll eat pasakum, and they could eat with the Yisrael. So why can't they join together? So this falls back to what I said last week, and I explained the idea of zimun. The idea of zimun is not something which is, just adding strength to what you're doing in Birkas Hamazon. Birkas Hamazon is to thank God for giving you the food and praying that He'll continue to give you food in abundance. And zimun is, strengthening that, like calling together people, to pre-thank Hashem. We'll thank Hashem, and then we'll thank Him before we're going to thank Him. No, zimun is to make you more. There was a lot of you eating together. When you have a meal, you joke around. A lot of normal people joke around. They have a good time. They're joining together for food. People are not talking Torah all the time. Let's hope they're not talking Torah. If they're not talking, if they're each learning from their sefer, I don't think you can make a zimun because they're not eating together. Even if you started together and eating together, you're eating and looking in a sefer at the same time. I'm not saying this halacha, but it seems to me you should be part of a zimun because you're not joining together. This is like over here. I'll explain in a second why I think that way. So the reason what you're doing in zimun is because you're joined together in the meal. You're having a good time at the meal. So there's obviously a lot of levity at the meal. And you're about to do something very important over here. You're supposed to thank God for the food that He gave you in abundance and ask for that He continues to give it to you. So in order to introduce it, hazmana, zimun is hazmana, to prepare yourself for what you're about to do, to transfer, right? To go from a state of levity to a state of seriousness, which is Birkas Hamazon is, you need this hazmana when you have 3 people. If you have less than 3 people, it's not a party. If you have 10 people, it's even more of a party. But if you have 3 people, it's a little bit of a party. 3 people is a robin. So you have a lot of people over here. You had a good time doing the meal. Now more be serious. Hazmana, let's prepare ourselves. Let's bless, prepare ourselves. We're blessing to the person who gave us his food. Oh, so now we have that short zimun, that short introduction, that short hazmana, that short preparation to prepare ourselves for having the proper seriousness for Birkas Hamazon. So here also, even though technically there's nothing usher, right, about Pas Akum, but because these Kohanim are not going to eat from the Pas Akum, right, so there's not the same intermingling during the meal, right? When everyone's eating their own foods, right, um, this is sort of like the idea, you know, uh, like when they have, my father used to work at a law firm. I still works at a law firm, but he, he used to go out to dinners and, with his law firm, and, um, they went out to non-kosher places a lot of times for these New Year's parties, or whatever, Christmas parties, whatever. But they cared. There were a couple of Jewish lawyers there, so they cared, and they would order from La Marais or some fancy steakhouse a portion for my father and a couple of other associates there that were Jewish, that were Orthodox. So they also couldn't pertain, but they had the special person bring it, and it was wrapped up. So it's when everyone's eating from their own food, and you're not joining together the food, there's not so much intermingling. So that's the reason that Chazal said too that you shouldn't eat at a non-Jewish restaurant. It shouldn't chasnas. You shouldn't be too close to them, and then you'll be great friends, buddies with them, and then you'll marry your daughter off, or you'll marry your son. Your son will marry their daughter, and the children will be non-Jewish. So because of that, so there's only real levity and real intermingling when everyone's able to eat together what the other person's eating. And even if the Yisrael can't eat with the Kohanim, but this is the Kohanim eat with the Yisrael, so there's intermingling, at least in terms of everyone being able to join in one person's food. They can all join in the Yisrael's food. However, if there's no intermingling, because the Kohanim can't with the Yisrael, like they don't need Pasach, the Yisrael can eat with the Kohanim because they're in Chala, so there's no intermingling of at least three people. And if there's no intermingling of at least three people, there's no tremendous levity at the meal, and there's no hesech hadas really, and therefore you don't have to have the proper hazmana, proper preparation for Birkas Hamazon as you normally would. Even though technically there's no isser over here, because the mitzias, the actuality is that you're not intermingling, you're not joining together. So there's not that levity that you need to prepare yourself for Birkas Hamazon with the seriousness of the Zima, so you don't need it anymore. That's the explanation I'd like to offer over here. I think it's the correct explanation, and we'll talk more about it as we go forward. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.